Uplift, Conversations with Visionaries, is an inspiring interview series showcasing the journeys of successful entrepreneurs who not only excel in their fields, but also use their success as a force for positive change. It is another episode of Uplift, Conversations with Visionaries. I have Yakov with us. We are going to get into your story, the ups, the downs. Sometimes we talk a little bit about those life-changing moments to inspire those visionary entrepreneurs who are going through their own journey. I want to welcome you to the show.
Thank you for having me, Alicia. Great to be here.
So you've been on my other podcast. It's been a while. That's how we first connected. You're an amazing individual, pivoting in your own life and in your own business. Don't know how much we'll get into that, but I am excited to share more of you with my audience. Let's kick things off, though, for this segment by talking a little bit about one of your high points, something that you're most proud of in business, one of those accomplishments that you can just appreciate.
Yeah. And I love that word appreciation. So I want to actually preface it. We were talking about off air about Dr. David Hawkins and the map of consciousness, which if people haven't heard about, definitely worth Googling, at least studying that a little bit more. It's one of the most practical spiritual tools out there. And I remember reading Letting Go, and he was talking about this pride versus appreciation, how pride is actually a lower energy compared to appreciation, which is super high. So whenever I say I'm proud of that, I frame it or I feel it as appreciation, right? So I love looking at it. What are you most appreciative of about yourself or your accomplishments? I think it's a very loving way to look at it, as opposed to pride sometimes can be defensive. Oh, look at me, it's that peacocking thing, which, sometimes comes from the ego. So with that said, appreciation, I appreciate, where I'm at right now, what I've built, the main business, multiple six-figure business pretty much runs without me on autopilot, systems, processes, great results, built that from scratch. So appreciative of that and also appreciative of my spiritual journey as well in terms of business and how I look at things now as opposed to how I looked at them 2, 3, 4 years ago. It's night and day.
So we oftentimes go through some challenging things,
Hmm.
and it shapes who we become and the way that we transition and the way that we grow and how we show up in the world. And one of the questions that I really like to ask on Uplift is about one of your lower points in life, something that you went through that was really challenging, but it also was one of those experiences in your life that helped shape you. So are you willing to share one of those lower points with us?
Yeah, so let's talk about the summer of 2021. I was in a long-term relationship. I was in my first long-term relationship at the time, and that ended pretty abruptly. And it was my first time really, really dealing with grief. Feeling that like just despair, sobbing, bawling my eyes out. And just it was very much a dark night of the soul type of moment. And I remember not knowing what to do, not having clarity. And it happened to also coincide with a terrible business month, the worst business month I had had in years. So, and I don't think that's a coincidence, by the way. I think energetically everything comes together. And so I remember being at that place, and one of the things that I realized what came out of it, right? And for anyone listening who may be in a similar type of place or dealing with something, we all have, different journeys. What came out of it is for the first time, I learned how to deal with my emotions. I had done some different things in the past. I had been into self-help for a while, but to actually process and release and have tools for forgiveness, self-forgiveness, releasing energy, deeper self-awareness, that helped tremendously because it, put a mirror out in front of me and gave me a path to doing that. So that was one of the biggest gifts. And I also learned a lot about myself and, how I relate to women, how I relate to business, how I'd like to show up. It gave me a lot of clarity. So it was a very, very bumpy time. But on the other side of that came tremendous transformation.
That's what I refer to as one of those catalyzing moments, and we've
Yeah.
all had them to varying degrees. One of the things that I see, and this is a common theme with our guests, is when you're going through that, of course it feels like hell. It is hell. It's hell on earth. And it's incredibly painful. And we're in so many of those lower vibrational emotional states. A lot of our old beliefs, those limiting beliefs, and um, the old paradigm that we were part of, the state of consciousness that we were previously in, it's painful to break through that. It's painful to um, go through sort of like this rebirth in a sense, because a part
Hmm.
of us dies and a new part of us emerges. And that's, that symbolism of the phoenix rising from the ashes type of thing. And I found that often we don't go through that type of thing just once. In some cases, we go through it multiple times, obviously to, varying degrees of intensity. But every time we come out on the other side of that, we are not only a better version of ourselves, but we have so much more to give others. So that's the perfect segue to my final question, which is one way that you are giving back and paying it forward. It's great to have success for ourselves, for our own benefit, for maybe our family or, whoever's in our immediate vicinity, but there's something so deeply rewarding about how we can pay it forward and give it back. So I'd love to find out from you, what is something you're passionate about and how you're paying it forward and giving it back?
Yeah, so what's interesting about this, right, when we talk about spiritual things and mindset energetics, right, sometimes we have a wisdom about us, right, and we have things we can share with people, or sometimes I'm sure you experience this as well in your practice. Someone will say something and you think to yourself, huh, I hear a limiting belief. I can connect the dots. That's a solvable problem. We can release this. We can do something about this. And part of the gift of giving, right, so I'll answer this in two parts, is not forcing that on someone. It's like don't teach when not asked. You can drop a little breadcrumb, see if someone will bite, but if not, like good. It's not their time. It's not on me to transform them without their consent because that's messed up. It's lame. And no one wins. It's just two people get frustrated. That's what happens. How do I know? I've tried before, right? So the give is if someone asks for that type of guidance, offering it and being willing to share unconditionally, and whether or not the person does anything with it is on them. So I'll give you an example. So I go to a gym right around me. It's a really nice gym. And one of the girls that works at the front desk, we got to talking. She was reading a book by Dean Graziosi, like, about like business and stuff like that. So we had a conversation and like she was telling me what she wants to build. And, she comes from trauma and like she, has a physical impediment. And so she's like, hey, can we have a further conversation about this? I said, sure, no problem. Right. So we met up separately and I just kind of gave her, based on her situation, like, here's a path that you can take, right? What she does or did with that path is unconditional, right? Because it's a give and she was willing to hear it. She seemed very receptive to it. But again, I'm not focused on her outcome because that's her path, right? So those little situations, plugging in like that, sharing those insights is a really big thing. I also believe business at the highest level is a give, right? Making an offer is actually a give, right? So a lot of people say, well, I don't want to sell stuff. I don't want to make offers. Well, when you make an offer, it's an invitation, it's a give. And if you believe that that can benefit someone, then you're giving a gift, right? Again, whether or not someone accepts the offer is on them, right? If I gave someone $1 million check and they were like, no, I'm good. I don't want it, or this is fishy. Am I going to get frustrated or take it personally? No, it's like it's a gift. Whether or not they want it, there's someone else that can receive it, right? So at this point, I look at marketing and sales as giving gifts, right? When I'm making an offer, when I'm articulating a message, I'm giving a gift, not in a conceited way, not like, oh, I'm a hot shot and all that, but more in like, okay, this has a potential to be very transformational for someone. Whether or not someone receives it, I still have the responsibility and the power to be able to give that.
I love that. It's a powerful mindset shift. And there are a lot of people who are listening to this who are still struggling with those beliefs that in many cases are passed on to us by parents and family and society that selling is bad, it's wrong, it's greedy, it's manipulative, the all sorts of things. And we have to reframe that in our own mind and recognize that it really can be, like you said, a gift. And there is definitely a very different energy between saying you need what I have. I remember early on I learned that lesson. You can offer things and people, even if it's exactly what they say they want, they may say no, and that's okay. And you just honor that. You just honor that everyone is exactly where they are, and all you can do is just with an open heart extend the invitation. And if they're ready and if it's right, just trust and you'll be there.
Yeah, 1000%.
Awesome. This has been another short but impactful episode. And I want to thank you so much for sharing your energy and your wisdom. I obviously wholly and completely resonate with everything that you just said. It's, speaking my language here. And I think that for those listening, you planted some powerful seeds of consideration. So thank you so much for being with us.
Awesome. Thank you.
And thank you to everyone who's tuned in to this episode of Uplift. You know we're doing this for you. Make sure you subscribe. And until next time, we will see you in another episode.